without falter into water. Look to the sky with care, my love, and speak the things you see. Let new names take a root and thrive and grow. And even as you journey on, past dying stars exploding like the gilded one in flight, leave your little gifts of light. And in the dead of night, my darling, find the gleaming eye of starling. Like the little aviator, sing your heart to all dark matter. Walk through the world with care, my love, and sing the things you see. Let new names take a root and thrive and grow. And even as you stumble through Macher sands eroding, let the fern unfurl your grieving. Let the heron still your breathing. Let the silky swim you deeper. Oh, my little silver seeker. Even as the hour grows bleaker, be the singer and the speaker. And in city and in forest, let the larks become your chorus. And when every hope is gone, let the raven call you home.
Welcome, everybody. That beautiful song is by Spell Song from an album called The Lost Words. It's a blessing, and it was so beautiful watching you interpret it, Moonbeam. It really made me want to cry. Welcome to all of you. I'm Starhawk. Charles Williams is here, our co-director, co-teacher of Earth Activist Training. And we have some wonderful speakers who are going to be coming on board to share some hope and inspiration with you. I know for a lot of us, this has been a shocking and a difficult week or so with the results of the election and just the incredible disappointment in the choices that some of our fellow citizens have made. But we wanted to offer some grains of hope and some direction for where we might go in the future, and just some stories, because whenever I feel despair and discouragement about the overall political scene, I just look around and I remember how many people I know that are just quietly doing the work of teaching, of healing, of regenerating the earth, of communicating, of reaching out to people. And that's where I find hope and inspiration. So we're going to create a ritual space here and do a meditation. A little meditation to compost some of our feelings and bring fertility out of it. And then we're going to have some living examples of that work and that hope and that potential for regeneration. Do you want to say something, Charles?
Welcome, everybody. It's great to have people here. For everybody who's watching it live and everybody who will be watching the recording. Yeah, thanks for coming. I've noticed that today has been a day full of technical glitches and challenges, so be patient with us. If something comes up, I don't expect anything to, but it's just been one of those days. So be patient. We'll make it through tonight with everybody connected and on.
Yeah, I hope y'all, well, obviously you're here, so you were able to get on and get registered. But if for some reason you weren't and you're watching this afterwards, we are sorry. It seemed to be working for most everybody, but there were a stream of people all day who, for some reason, just were not getting the link. So we put it on the website, and we hope everyone who wanted to get on has been able to get on. This is our fundraiser for our diversity scholarships, and it's also the kickoff for our silent auction for our fall and winter fundraiser, where we have all kinds of amazing things that you can get with a donation. If you're looking for holiday gifts, if you're looking for something that your organization might want to do, or a consult, or all kinds of things, check it out on our website. And I know Charles is putting that into the chat right now. And with that said, let's get ready for our ritual. I want to say I am speaking to you right now tonight from the land of the Kashaya Pomo, out here on the edge of the continent where the ocean meets the continental plate, a land that has been tended for tens of thousands of years by the indigenous people here. Land that has a heritage of colonization and dispossession, but also a tremendous heritage of art, of culture, of basket weaving, which is what the Pomo are known for worldwide, incredible and elaborate and beautiful basketry, ceremony, song, and recently the Kashaya have gotten some land back, about 500 acres on the coast itself, which now gives them access to some of their traditional gathering and fishing grounds, which they haven't had, for many, many decades. All they've had is a small little 40-acre rancheria. So we're all very happy about that. And I feel so honored to be a guest on this land. And it's really my hope that the work that we do will be in that spirit of tending and caring for the land and the people, and that I can be a good guest. And I invite you all, if you want to put into the chat the name of the indigenous people on the land that you are on. So let's take a breath. Settle yourself in your chair, or you might stand up. A moment. Stretch a little if you need to. Take some deep breaths down into your belly. As you breathe in and breathe out, feel your roots as if you were a tree. It's planted on the earth, and you have roots that go down into the living soil, down through all the layers of soil and mud and rock, down through the waters that are held in the earth, down through the bedrock itself, down into that heart of fire at the very core of the earth. As you breathe in and breathe out, maybe take a moment and let yourself just release into that fire anything you want to release. Anything that's keeping you from being present in this moment. this ritual. Maybe do a big yawn. And maybe just take a deep breath and just let it all go with the sound. And then breathing in and out again. Imagine you could breathe some of that fire up through your roots. Up through all those layers of soil and mud and rock. Up into the base of your spine and your belly. Breathing in and out. Just feel that fire warming you. You breathe it up your spine into your heart. Take a breath and maybe let some of that fire really give your heart some warming and some healing. I think probably all of us can use a little good energy for our hearts right now. And then breathe it up and out the top of your head like branches. And then reach up to the sky and sweep back down and touch the earth. And feel that sky energy. Maybe for you it's sunlight. Maybe for you it's moonlight. It's full moon tonight. Feel that full moon energy just gleaming and glowing. And taking a deep breath, draw it in. Draw it down, down through the top of your head. Down through your heart, hands and belly, all the way down through your legs and feet into the earth. And just feel that flow of energy up from the earth and through you and down from the sky and through you. Feel yourself as that place where earth and sky meet. And blessed be.
Thank you, Star. From this connected place, this grounded place, I invite everybody to draw up a thread of energy. Maybe pull up one gossamer thread of energy. And as you pull up that energy, toss it out into the universe. And let it flow across, kind of like a spider web would drift across the sky until it meets another thread of in this group and clamp on and move on to touch another thread. And let's weave a web in this group, an energetic web that connects us all, a basket around the earth. And into that basket, let's call the elements. With a breath in, let's call in some air. Breathe in and call in some air, and let's let it out with a sound as a way to invite air into our space tonight. See, welcome to air. Welcome to breath and voice. Let's call in some water. Or let's call in some fire from the south. Let's call in some fire. Feel the warmth around you. See if you can just take a moment and just feel the temperature around you. Maybe you're in a space where it's warm or where it's cool, but you can feel that difference. Maybe touch something in the room and notice if you feel cool or warm. And let's invite fire, that spark of life that runs within us and runs within the world. That spark of creativity and magic. I'm going to say welcome to fire as we look at our grains of hope tonight. And to water, I invite you to look around and see where there's water in your space, where you're at. Is there some water somewhere? Maybe it's in a cup nearby, or there's a sink. Maybe there's a plant or another fellow creature that carries water around with it. Just notice where water is in our world and thank it for being there and invite it to join us tonight. That life-giving force, water. Our emotions and our feelings, the tides. So you welcome water. And to the north, to earth, the solid world. Touch something solid. There's something here. And just let's be grateful for the solid world that gives us something comfortable to sit on, maybe shelters us from the weather, maybe feeds us. And to all the physical, earthy parts of our world, I say, welcome, welcome Earth. That which just gives us something to stand on and feeds us and holds us. And to the center, to spirit, to connection. Is there something you're grateful for today? Just one thing, big or small. Just let's note one thing that you're grateful for and call that in, the spirit of gratitude. See, welcome to spirit, welcome to center. And welcome to all of you. You may want to unmute.
So we wanted to begin this ritual tonight with a little meditation on compost, because I think there's a lot of, let's just say, garbage floating around. And in permaculture, we always have a saying that waste is a resource. That these things that we think are worthless or maybe even detrimental are actually something we can use to feed something else. And that all of nature works through reciprocal relationships where one thing's death is another thing's food. One thing's waste is another thing's resource. And I don't know how many of you actually make compost. I hope you all do. It's not hard to do. But when you make compost, you take the stuff that we think of as garbage, we might think of as rotten or even disgusting, and you pile it up with other stuff that you might think is rotten and disgusting, and add some straw or some dried leaves or whatever, put it in the right size pile and add the right amount of water, and magically it turns into this incredibly fertile living substance that is the basis for growing all the stuff we want to grow that can nourish us, that can feed us, that can make beautiful flowers, that can grow large trees. So let's just take a breath right now. As you take a breath, I'd like you to just imagine yourself in a garden. It might be a garden you know and love. Maybe it's one where you actually work and grow food. It might be a garden of your imagination. The dream garden you'd love to have. Might be a garden you've visited sometime. But just take a breath and let yourself wander around there for a moment. Look around and notice what's growing there. Take a deep sniff in and notice what you smell. What sounds do you hear? Are there birds? Are there voices? Is there something growing there you can reach out and taste? Maybe a leaf of mint or a tomato. Look around you and notice what you see. As you take a breath and you look around in this garden, you might notice that there's lots of stuff that's growing, that's flourishing. Maybe it's still putting out fruit, even in this autumn. You know, here in California, this is actually a time of renewal with the winter rains, and things that were dormant come alive again. And the winter vegetables and stuff start to grow and flourish. The grass is green. But as you look around, you'll notice that there is one part of this garden where things are not thriving. Take a breath and just walk over, take a look at it. You know, have you ever really just put your heart and soul into a garden, planted stuff and watered it and protected it from birds and predators and nurtured it along and along, and then, I don't know, something happens at the very end and it just doesn't thrive? Or it grows up and somehow it doesn't get watered at just the right time and suddenly everything dies. And just take a breath and look at this patch of the garden. Maybe it's a place where you put a lot of your hopes. Maybe you put a lot of work into this part of the garden. Maybe you didn't put in as much work as now you kind of wish you had. And maybe you've had gardens disappoint you before, and it was just hard to bring yourself to really commit all that energy. Maybe you did. Maybe you thought you'd done everything right. You watered, you fertilized, you tended, you tried to look at every part of the garden. But as you take a breath now and look around, you see it just didn't work. Take a breath and let yourself just feel for a moment the times in your life where you have tried. You have put your faith in something. You have let yourself hope. And it just didn't work. As you look around, you see flowers that have withered on the vine and fruits that never ripened. And squashes that just sort of dried up and never really filled out. Tomato plants maybe that just fell over. As you breathe in and out, there may be a temptation just to give up. Say, hell with it, I'm not gardening anymore. It's too disappointing. It's too frustrating. And just take a moment and let yourself sit with that urge. Because we all have it sometimes, that feeling of, I just want to give this up. But as you take a breath, I'd like you to remember how we make compost. And imagine you could begin to gather up what's there in the garden. Those fruits that never fruited, those withered vines, those blighted leaves. Just take a breath and let's gather them up and make them into a pile. Is there something in that garden that smells awful? That maybe just has really started to rot and go bad? Just add it to that pile. Is there something that maybe started off green and then got blighted with something toxic or diseased? You can add that to the pile. There are things in compost that can break down even toxics. Take a breath. You can pile in all the lies and the disinformation and the hate and the awfulness This last period of time, imagine it like all those blighted plants. Just pile it up. And when you pile up all that greeny rot stuff, now let's look for some dried stuff. You know, those hopes that didn't come to fruition, those things that dried on the vine, those grasses that no longer have any life in them. Just take a breath and gather them up. The fallen leaves, the pine needles, and pile them up and pile them up. And as you breathe, just let yourself think right now about what is it in your own life you might want to add to this compost pile. Are there things in your personal life, dreams or hopes that didn't come to fruition? Relationships that have gone sour or stale? Just pile them up. Are there things in our collective life, great disappointments that you might feel in your fellow human beings, in your hopes for the country or for the world? Just throw them on that pile and let's begin to water it down with our breath, with our sorrow, with our grief. Are there fears that you have now about the future? Pile them up, add them. Water them down. See that pile growing and growing. Is there anger? You want to rage at someone. Grab someone and shake some sense into them. Knock them on the head till they start to see clearly. Just pile it up. Pile it up. And water it down. And as that pile grows and grows, as you take a breath and you begin to feel it getting warm, it's heating up. Inside it, all of that rotten stuff is starting to decay. That means that living creatures are in there. They're eating it. They're transforming it. They're giving off heat as they do that. They're breaking down the toxins. They're breaking down the rot. And it is changing. It is transforming. Make the pile large and high. All that lives must someday die. Children of the living earth, from decay will come rebirth. Make the pile large and high. All that lives must someday die. Children of the living earth, from decay will come rebirth. Make the pile large and high. All that lives must someday die. Children of the living earth, from decay will come rebirth. And take a breath. And just notice how that pile is transforming. How it changes. And all that stuff that seems so rotten, it just goes back to being living earth again. And in that pile, there's so much life. Take a breath, and as you breathe, imagine you could smell that smell of living earth, that wonderful smell of rich compost. As you take it in, just let yourself know that out of this time of such great disappointment, anger, fear, we can make compost. We can create what we need to revitalize the earth, to revitalize our communities and our work and ourselves. So take a breath and imagine you could plunge your hand now into deep, rich, beautiful brown compost. You can smell it, you can feel it, you can spread it out over that garden. You could feel it bringing back life and fertility to the land. You can feel how out of the deepest disappointment we can bring renewal and hope for change. Make the pile deep and high. All that lives must someday die. Children of the living earth, from decay will come rebirth. Make that pile large and high. All that lives must someday die. Children of the living earth, from decay will come rebirth. Just take a breath and imagine that wherever there's some place in your life that needs a little more fertility, creativity, nourishment, resources, luck, you can spread some of this compost. And you can trust that the seeds we plant, that the grains of hope that we harvest will be nourished and will grow. With the breath, feel that full moon shining down, that moonlight energy soaking in. Take it in, soak it in for yourself and your community and the seeds that you plant. And let the drum fade away. And let's take a moment and bring ourselves back into our physical senses. Pat the edges of your body. Notice what you're smelling and tasting. Open your ears and notice what you hear. Open your eyes. Notice what you see. Say your name out loud. Starhawk. Clap your hands 3 times. And that's the end of the story. So that's what we can do with this time, is take it, make some compost from it, and plant some seeds. And we want to shift now and to give you some practical hope and inspiration. We want to introduce a few people who are doing just that in their lives. They can hear their stories and get inspired.
And I think leading us off, we have Hannah Hartman from Earth RM and Maui Bioremediation Group. Maui Remediation Group. They're going to tell us about some of the work that they're doing.
Awesome. Mahalo, Starhawk, and everyone for leading us through that and for just holding this space for such an incredible scholarship. I should set a timer, right? Yeah, 5 minutes. Okay, because I could talk forever about the contamination crises that we are experiencing here in Pai'aina o Hawaii. But first, o Hana ko'u inoa no Los Angeles Traditional Tongva Territory Maiau, noho au ma hilo moku o Keawe, Pai'aina o Hawaii, he settler loha aina au. So my name's Hannah. I'm originally from LA, Traditional Tongva Territory, but I now live on the Big Island or Hawaii Island in Pai'aina o Hawaii, or the Hawaiian Archipelago, which is an illegally occupied and illegally overthrown independent kingdom. I think I wanted to start by saying, let's see, I guess, because you were talking so much about just the beads of hope, and we can't talk about the hope yet until we come to terms with and make reparations for all the things that kind of brought us to this place and this point of time. But I'm a bioremediation ecologist, so I work with native and sometimes naturalized species of fungi, microbial communities, and plants to break down environmental pollutants. I also teach sustainable agriculture at a local prison. And so in both of these aspects of my life, we are breaking down contaminants by allying with other life forms, and we are restoring the soil food web and growing food for food sovereignty, for food ea, here in Hawaii through working with individuals impacted by the injustice system. So the 2 orgs that I am representing here today, though, are Maui Bioremediation Group, which is our LLC side, and Earth RM, which is our nonprofit side. Both are dedicated to doing bioremediation in Hawaii via bioremediation curriculum development, through actual implementation of these projects, whether it be pilot projects or at scale. And first, I'm saying first a lot, e kalamai, my apologies, but there's a lot to this story and it's only 5 minutes. I'm going to start with Lahaina. So Maui Bioremediation Group was formed in wake of the Lahaina tragedy. Lahaina burned to the ground on August 8th of 2023. And it was a series of illegal water diversions, right? This illegal overthrow and occupation of this place. There's a lot that led to what happened in Lahaina. And what happened afterwards also was a second wave of tragedy, right? When a fire comes through, especially in an urban area, everything you can imagine under the sun is then transformed and released and combusted and undergoes all of these different chemical and biological processes and contaminates a lot of our lepo, our soils, and our vai, or our waters. Lahaina, this word, this name for this place. La means sun, and haina means scorching, right? So the scorching sun, it's a very, very dry and hot area. But before the name Lahaina was given to this place on Maui, which is the former capital of the Hawaiian Kingdom, which is very symbolic. Her name was Malu Ulu Olele, which means underneath the shade or the protection of the flying breadfruit. So this was a huge, massive agroforest, right, that once stood in the kingdom of Hawaii. And this burn scar is almost to a T, the 10 square miles that was this incredibly productive food place. And so the Kaiaulu, or the community of Lahaina, has really pushed for and fought for the ho'i, or the restoration of that food forest, of Molu'ulu Olele, and of the sacred sites woven into that place and that story. When FEMA and Army Corps and these different federal agencies came in post-disaster, it really wasn't handled well. This is deeply a critique of the United States and not of individuals of any capacity whose hands are bound to playbooks and protocols that are set at a federal standard, right? So FEMA came in and had their playbook, which was largely a mechanical-based remediation method. So currently, the remediation paradigm, it's mechanical, it's scraping away soil, which we all know here takes a very, very long time to build and to heal. So they either scrape that soil and move it to a dump. In this case, Oluwalu is the name of the place that they did this to. Or they use chemical methods. So there's not a lot of biological methods in the current paradigm of remediation. There are some, but it's not at all the forefront of cleanup, especially in post-disaster settings. And so the crew that I work with, we were teaching an online myco-remediation course. So how to work with different species of fungi to break down very specific pollutants when Lahaina happened. And several of our homana, or several of our students are from and of Maui. And so when Lahaina happened, they were like, okay, you talked about all of this incredible healing work. Is there anything that you can do about it? Because our standard is no level of contamination is acceptable, and we want to be able to grow food. And as we know, the EPA, FEMA, all these different regulatory agencies that set the standards for toxicity allowance are really, really high. And we have endless studies that say there's, let's say, no level of safe drinking water, or no safe level of lead in drinking water, for example. So our goal going in was, one, weaving Ike Kanaka, or Hawaiian science, with Western science, right? Western epistemology. So it's deeply this weaving of two worldviews, to kako'o, to uplift former ways of knowing and move forward with new innovative ways that, again, weave these two different types of knowledge systems. So we did our very best to intersect FEMA and Army Corps in these debris removal task force and encourage, let's say, working with indigenous microorganisms, right? Those IMOs harvested from that watershed, from that same ahupua'a, instead of the water that they were spraying all of the debris with before wrapping it up in the very technical burrito wrap term and then transporting it to the landfill. That's only one example. We also wanted to put out biofiltration socks, right? So instead of those standard silt socks you see around construction sites, they're often used again in post-disaster settings. They're usually crushed pallets, which often leach more chemicals than do good, or wood chips, which is a step up, and we're down for, or the model that we work with, where we incorporate a bit of compost, soil, wood chips that have been inoculated with a native fungi from the area, and then biochar that's been inoculated with IMOs that we have harvested from that area too, that we early on in their cultivation process introduce them to some of the contaminants that they would then be exposed to when we ask them to go out into the landscape and do their thing and break down all of the remnant contaminants. And this largely has to do with organic contamination, right? Because those heavy metals cannot be broken down or destroyed. They can only be concentrated and dissipated and moved from place to place. But we can do this in ways where they are returned to Aina, or to that land that feeds us, where their toxicity is not a problem, right? Because heavy metals are not inherently the problem. Fire is not inherently the problem. All of these beings and elementals, they have their place, just like us as keystone species, right? So where we are now, right? We were in all the right places, talking to county council, to state legislators, even to federal level agencies about how we need to change our disaster response protocol, especially here in Hawaii, right? We had people come over from the continent that know nothing about our forests, our indigenous people, the Kanaka Maoli, Kanaka Oiwi, Ohana. And so now where we are at is FEMA, Army Corps have scraped away up to 6 inches of all of the soil in Lahaina and have backfilled all of it with gravel, have tested for heavy metals. And in theory, these heavy metals have come out underneath regulatory thresholds, which we are now finding is not true in every place that we have been. So now we have a project called Mālama Leali'i. This word Mālama means to really, really care for. And Leali'i is the name of the Hawaiian homestead community that we are doing this project in Lahaina. And so what we're doing is we're coming in and we're testing for different contaminants, right? Those heavy metals, dioxins and furans, microbial abundance and diversity, so we can see who was the first to the scene, who's already doing some of that remediation work. right? And then we harvested those IMOs from Mauka, from the mountain behind Lahaina, brought them down, exposed them to some of these contaminants, bulked them out, and then are going to be doing several applications when we move back that gravel, spraying those IMOs, right? Testing for contamination before and after, doing this 3 times, and then coming in with the soil and biochar blend on top that is meant to kickstart that soil food web and just bring soil back to this place. And then we come in and we hydroseed with a bunch of different types of cover crops that really address that heavy metal component. We test the flesh, and then we take that much material and break it down. So we're dealing with this much hazardous waste when it comes to heavy metals. And yeah, that's kind of the start of the rebuilding of this agroforest there in Lahaina. The reason that we are an LLC while we are deeply anti-capitalist is because the only way that we were allowed in these rooms because of disaster capitalism was to form an LLC. All of us are deeply not about that and doing our best to be decolonial in the ways that we navigate this and move with community and through the world. But we are an LLC. And then we also opened up Earth RM, who is our 501c3 counterpart, because this is also near and dear to our heart. And we need to be educating our youth. We need to be educating people in general, right? Leading workshops, having bioremediation and earth body healing practices embedded in curriculum, the youngest age possible, right? And then also doing novel bioremediation research. I use the word novel with a bunch of caveats because so much of the worldview that I come from, right, the Western worldview, the hard science worldview, uses words like pioneer and novel, when in reality, it's just a remembering and uplifting and a recentering of Indigenous sciences. But what we're doing is, for example, testing different native species of fungi and their capacity to remediate very specific pollutants. A project that's near and dear to my heart because poop is a passion of mine. I think it was Starhawk earlier. I'm wrapping it up, I promise. Who was mentioning on this restoration or the retelling of the story of waste, because when we call something waste, we treat it as such. And the word in Olelo Hawaii in the Hawaiian language for soil, one of the ways to describe this phenomenon is hana lepo, which literally translates to make soil. And so Hawaii has a crisis where we have 50,000 gallons of raw sewage released into our nearshore waters every day. And we also have a really incredible native species of fungi that happens to love munching on bacteria, also loves munching on E. coli, right? And so doing a mycofiltration process in our wastewater treatment facilities, in our individual wastewater treatment systems, can really address that disinfection component. I have so much to talk about, but I think, okay, we got the poop and we got Mala Maleli'i for Lahaina. And if anybody wants to talk story about this more, we can go on forever. We have a lot of really incredible people involved and a lot of really awesome projects that work with, yeah, just amazing, amazing things. So mahalo for giving me the time. Thank you for hosting this space, and reach out. And if we're busy and we don't get back to you, reach out again, because it's all about the mycelial network. And I know that we're all pa'ahana, like we're all really, really busy, but we will make time and there will be space. And I have deep faith in the timing of all of it. So mahalo nui. Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you so much. And I'm really inspired to hear what you're doing. I want to just say, Earth Activist Training, we do have classes on disaster response and preparation. We work with Lila Darwish, who's one of our former students, who's amazing, who's written a book on bioremediation. She's been hopefully going to be doing some work in Palestine when the conditions allow. We have sort of a sister group we work with in Europe who's been working. This summer we had 7 amazing Lebanese students who came to our course in France, who are now in a teacher training with Murad Al-Khafash, who runs a permaculture site in the West Bank, where I taught a few years back. And
Wow.
our Afghan refugees that we have supported who are now in Portugal are also in that same training. And this work of how do you recover the land after a natural disaster or after war or after contamination and toxins is so very important, and so important that we learn these skills and we share these skills with the people who are on the front lines of these struggles. So thank you so much for that.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yeah. I think next, Charles,
Next, we were going to have Wanda join us. Amazing. Just an amazing all-around person doing great work. And let's bring Wanda up here. Yeah, here you go. Hey, Wanda.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I am Wanda Stewart. I'm the Executive Director of Common Vision. We primarily work in West Oakland in a neighborhood called the Lower Bottoms. It does not get lower or darker than the Lower Bottoms. But I have to thank Starhawk in particular because I was literally earth activated through her and through the course that she and Charles included me in all the way back in 2014. And I didn't just take the, how to grow food and all of the lessons of tending land. I took very seriously the social permaculture pieces of that and have worked pretty efficiently and artfully to create a program that puts school gardens in public schools where we distribute really high-end organic food that the kids and their families can consume while planting trees in the neighborhood as climate change mitigation. So I am really proud to represent what EAT training can teach, and also where it can go and inspire you to support it in the future. Charles, if you would put the my four ladies up first. The email said the very first slide. So
Yes,
Starhawk asked me to say something that would inspire hope at this time. And I will be honest with all of you. One of my Facebook posts last Wednesday was Black Girl Magic Withdrawn. Anger that I experienced over the way in which the election transpired. In my own personal zone 0 and zone 1, I'm especially pissed off with Black men. My white female friends go, no, 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 but we, and I go, yeah, 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 but you too, right? But it, I will acknowledge, has inspired a rage in me that I'm working busily to try to compost. So I stand on the shoulders of these ladies, no matter what land I live on. And it is their labor and their toil in our country that spurs me forward. All of this picture was taken in 1925. All of them are more than 100 years old. Elizabeth Berkeley in the center with the stole around her neck was 125. And that's when I got the message that number one, my people will survive if we eat really good organic food. Number two, we will survive if we work in strong community with each other, tending that land. And number three, that we have a spiritual relationship with that land. And in the end of slavery, we went running from all of that. And you didn't want to look like a slave. High school kids today in our gardens will go, I don't want to try to do that slave work, right? I am here to take my people and our country back through the scene of the crime and the horror so that we can all heal. I want to be able to stand as strong as these ladies. So while my Black Girl Magic, and I've got endless stories about, being Kamala, you are excellent, you are everything, you could save the world. And then there's just this one, often white male person that doesn't want to yield power to your magic. And it's really hard to want to keep producing that again and again and again. But what gives me hope? Okay, Charles, next slide, please, with the little kids and the peace sign. This picture, that's my heart garden at Hoover Elementary in West Oakland. That is a massive grove of purple collard trees, one of the most wonderful permaculture plants that you could ever try to grow and have. It's good medicine and it propagates easily. And the kids and I had grown this crazy field. So this picture was taken on March 13th, 2020, when Oakland Unified School District closed schools. I went immediately to the school. We all just knew we were going to die in this pandemic that was coming. And me and the kids picked as many collard greens as we could and sent them home to their families. And we harvested 4 herbs that were prolific: oregano, mullein, mint, and plantain. And all of those, the herbalists among you will know that they're meant for respiratory support. And because of the garden program that we'd incorporated into this school, those kids knew that putting their oregano on their pizza was good medicine. They knew about making teas and tinctures. They knew how to propagate those collard greens. They knew how to cook them as well. And they all went home. I mean, don't they look triumphant, right? They're waving victory signs. And that was the day that, we believed the world as we knew it was coming to some sort of unknown end. And after that picture was taken, I cried and was also relieved. I felt like I had prepared my babies for whatever world they were inheriting. And even if I didn't survive what was coming, some of them would. How to grow, how to feed their families, how to take care of their bodies. Next slide, please, Charles. How to take care of the environment. We made endless fire cider and tinctures, and we used it well in community. Next slide. So the hope for me is teaching the children, and I find school and community gardens the best stacking function example you could ever have. You can teach individual kids. You can teach an individual grade. You're cultivating community at the same time that you're doing that work and teaching them about earth stewardship. So I am an example of what can come from somebody trying to do the work in the direction in which Starhawk pointed them. I met this tree here. That's a 400-year-old oak tree. And I put it in there just because it was a remarkable species. It is something like 160 feet in diameter. It's massive. It was on a Gullah Island in South Carolina and was certainly part of the Underground Railroad and the way in which the folks in those times moved through the woods. But now I want to show you the face of what you can support as I end this next one. That is Neil Porterheath. And Neil is from the continent of India, was raised in Los Gatos. And I met him originally when he was working for Good Eggs as one of their tech guys. He was making a lot of money and riding the wave of the pandemic when Good Eggs is an online virtual supermarket with incredibly wonderful food that's incredibly expensive. In the way in which the tech guys do each other, he eventually was out of there and has now come to work for Common Vision and is trying to figure out what his next path is. And what he's discovering is, one, he loves butterflies. You can't see the butterfly there, but he's been hatching butterflies in our classroom. But he's also been stewarding our school lands and teaching the kids and teaching himself how to do that and challenging himself to embrace that because he's got a Cal education, right? And trying to figure out how he can use his intellectual skills with what our neighborhood and what our earth needs to make it a better place. And his next exciting thing, he hopes, is applying to be one of the scholarship recipients for Earth activist training. So if you need a face to put your sights on for the future and for why to donate to this effort, I want you to know that Neil is a deserving guy. And as there anybody else that's out there trying to teach the principles of this work. There's a lot of work ahead, y'all, a lot. And some of it terrifies me. I often say there is so little hope that there's nothing to do but have hope. And no, I decide that it's not the end of the world, it's the beginning of a new one. And I invite you into that action by donating to prepare the young people of the world to rise in responsible leadership and stewardship for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wanda.
And next, I think we have Ash, who's going to come talk to us about some of the projects they're working on.
Hi, thank you. Oh, is my video not working?
Let me find you here.
There we go. Hi, everyone. I'm really honored to be here and get to share my story alongside Hannah and Wanda. Thank you for sharing your incredible work you're doing in the world. It's just really powerful to me, and so giving me real hope right now. My name's Ash. I am based out of Rhode Island, so on the lands of the Narragansett, the Pokanoket, and the Wampanoag people. I'm currently calling in tonight from Western Massachusetts, the lands of the Nipmuc people. And I'm a graduate of the 2024 Earth Activist Training Program this past January. And just a little bit about me. I'm a white person. I identify as trans and non-binary, and I'm a medicinal herb farmer and grower of plants, lover of plants, and an organizer. And so Earth Activist Training was a wonderful place for me to find the intersection of the different worlds I move in and the different purposes I serve in my life. And so I'm part of a queer land cooperative in Rhode Island called the Deep Well Land Collective. And we are a land-based community that is focused on creating space for queer and trans people and Black, Indigenous, and people of color to connect with the land, to heal, nourish, and nourish themselves, and connect with the land and other folks. So we are a pretty new project and are just figuring out what our work is and how to make that space. But we've been around for 3 years now and have been doing that work of gathering people and finding the people who are looking for us, who are looking for ways to break out of isolation, to connect with land, and to find the healing that we all need right now. And so we're a small group of 6 queer people and 1 gender fabulous toddler. And we have a vegetable CSA farm, a herd of goats, a flock of chickens, and lots of medicinal herbs growing. And so I wanted to share a little bit about my work and other part of my life, which is as an organizer. And so I work as an organizer with the organization SURGE, or Showing Up for Racial Justice. And we are an organization that looks to mobilize hundreds of thousands of white people to join multiracial movements for racial and economic justice. So our work is moving the masses of white people to be on the right side in the movement towards liberation and justice for all. And we believe that white people need to get organized because our communities are the spaces where white supremacy thrives, where white nationalism expands, and that we need enough white people to join this movement to actually win the world we need, where everyone can live with dignity and joy. So I've been with Surge since 2014. It's my movement home. I call it my movement home. And just to share a little bit about how it became my movement home, it was really actually in 2016 during Trump's first campaign. my parents, who are blue collar working class folks, were feeling moved to vote for Trump for president in 2016. And as a queer person, this was extremely devastating for me. I cried about it many times. I had many difficult conversations with them and just begged and pleaded. And it was baffling to me that my parents, who were struggling, they were like, we had lost our home to foreclosure. My stepdad had lost his job. My mom has worked in retail. They were just struggling. Baffling to me how they could identify with someone like Trump and think he was the right person to vote for. But in the end, my siblings and I did a lot of work and really talked it through with them about what it would mean for me as a queer person, what it would mean for our family, who were all getting healthcare through Obamacare at the time, and what it would mean for like our immigrant and people of color neighbors who we have more in common with than someone like Trump. And so my parents ended up not voting for Donald Trump in 2016. Yes, great. And so that's when I decided that I needed to be working with people like my parents to bring them into this movement. And because I know there's so many folks like my parents who have been lured into the narrative that it's people of color who are to blame for their struggles. So my work this year with Surge the big work this year was fighting really hard to defeat Donald Trump and MAGA in the election this year. And we did that not because we believe Kamala Harris is the answer and is going to save this world, but because we know that we have the best chances of winning the world we need if we could defeat the rising authoritarianism that Trump represents at the ballot box and be able to push harder for the things we need and not be on the defense. And as you know, as I was going through this, I was remembering back in January being in California at the Earth Activist training and talking about social permaculture. And Wanda, also, it was really impactful for me. That's a really important part of the training for me. As a group, we were engaging around questions that Starhawk and Charles were posing to us about what this year would hold in terms of the fight for liberation and justice, and what were the different approaches we believed were going to be necessary to win the world we need, right? And there was really potent and powerful conversation in the room about, do we work in like incremental change, or does it have to all change at once in one sweeping swoop? And I just loved getting to be in that space and talk about the social permaculture aspect. How are we moving people? How are we building the world we need? And learning so much from the elements of permaculture and from our non-human allies in this world. And so here we are. We know the results of the election. As Starhawk was guiding us through that meditation, I was thinking about, that feeling of putting so much energy and effort into something and seeing it not thrive and not succeed. And that ritual is really helpful for me right now. It was absolutely heartbreaking. It has been heartbreaking. And I don't need to tell you all that. I'm sure many people in this room are feeling that deeply, but I would love to share some hopeful stories that are coming out of the efforts that went into the work this year. And so the first thing I just want to share is about Western North Carolina. So also wanted to talk about disasters. Thank you, Hannah, it was powerful to hear about your work around that. So as everyone in the room knows, just over 6 weeks ago, Western North Carolina was hit with the deadliest inland hurricane on record. And when it was hitting, I was actually there on a staff retreat with fellow Surge coworkers, and we actually had to evacuate before the hurricane came. And it was devastating to see what happened. We were still in North Carolina as the hurricane hit, and as we were hearing about the damage and the infrastructure falling apart and homes and towns destroyed. And my partner actually works in emergency search and rescue and was sent on a crew down there to find missing people who were missing for days and had to be recovered. And so it was absolutely devastating. And I felt really personally connected to that from being so close and having my partner there and hearing the stories, and my partner as family there. And at the time, Surge had been doing a lot of organizing work around the election in Western North Carolina as well. We were knocking doors and talking to voters because that's a huge area with a lot of working class white voters in a really important swing state. So we'd been there on the doors, and there was a moment after the hurricane where we said, like, does it make sense to still do election work here? Is this where we should be? And we ended up deciding that it was extremely important. So what we did was we showed up and we did mutual aid work, and we decided to knock doors and do care calls and help people connect with the resources they needed in the aftermath and do that support for people, while also understanding that so many people didn't have the information they needed. So many polling places were destroyed in the hurricane, right? And many people didn't know how they would even vote in this election. So we were doing that work alongside. We questioned if it would be appropriate to talk about the election. And what we found was that so many people in Western North Carolina really did want to talk about the election. They were just overwhelmed and didn't know how to figure out their voting logistics when they're trying to figure out how to get fresh drinking water. And so we ended up doubling down and deciding we were really going to throw down in Western North Carolina and send more volunteers there and really hit as many doors as possible and talk to thousands of people. And I don't know how many people in the room saw the maps that came out after the election with like the arrows pointing left or right, like which way people moved, and how many of those arrows were pointing red to the right. And we're like, horrifying to see. I'm really happy to share that in Western North Carolina, those arrows were pointing left and to blue. It was one of the few places in the country where that was the case. And I don't think it's a coincidence that's where the hurricane hit. I don't think it's a coincidence that's where so many people were putting so much care and effort. I think a really powerful thing happens after disasters. And I just was introduced to this term actually, but many of us have probably heard of disaster capitalism. I just learned the term disaster collectivism, which is what happens when people come together in these really powerful, unexpected ways in the face of a disaster. And that just like really moved me to think about, like, in terms of thinking about disasters and the situations we're facing, the crises we're facing, the ways that it can really bring us together in unexpected and powerful ways, to move towards a better future and a better world. And not in, like, I feel like we're told so many stories about the exploitation and that comes from disasters, but we're not told as much about the cooperation and the collectivism and the care that comes when humans are facing those things together and figuring out how to face it together. And so that's one bit of story. Just one other story I wanted to share is that since Election Day, we've seen thousands, hundreds of thousands of folks activating into action. And I've had the opportunity. I'm coming to you tired from the East Coast. It's after 10 here, and we've still been going hard after Election Day. Like, usually doing this work, we just collapse after the election. It's been nonstop, and that's because so many people are coming up and coming out to say, I can't believe we're here, and I'm here to show up and figure out how to fight, continue the fight forward and fight for the world we need. So we're among many organizations that are gathering people in real life across the country to have meetings in their communities with their neighbors and to talk about how we're going to fight for each other in the face of another Trump presidency. And I just wanted to share, so one of the things we're doing at Surge is we're calling people around the country to talk to them about hosting these meetings. And it's a lot of folks who are just regular people. And so I talked to this woman named Lynn in Michigan the other day, and we call on the phone and say, how are you doing? It's after the election. How are you feeling? And there's a lot of feelings. We've been doing a lot of feelings talk. But this woman, Lynn in Michigan, was telling me how she's like, I don't think there's any way forward. There's no hope. There's nothing we can do. I just feel powerless. And I stuck with her on the phone and I like talked to her about it. What do you think? Why do you think that is? Or where do you see any openings? Where do you see any possibilities? And we ended up talking and getting to a place where I told her about these meetings and she was like, oh, I think I could do that. And we like talked about what it would feel like to be there in a room with other people who were also feeling the pain of this moment. And she just like, her energy just transformed over the course of the conversation, where by the end she was like, I'm going to be there. And actually, I just met these neighbors. I just moved to this neighborhood, but I just met some neighbors across the street who have a rainbow flag, who I thought maybe could be allies, because I don't know anyone else in my neighborhood yet. I'm going to bring them to this meeting too. And I would like to help plan the next meeting after this one that's coming up. I want to make sure we have another one after this one. And I just was really moved by that, just to know like the ways that, again, it's like we can be stuck in such hopelessness and not see a way forward. But if we could really lean into the connection and what is possible when we come together, even just in the same room, to figure out what's next together, it can really change our perception of what's possible and our visions for the future. So I want to just put that image in everyone's head about these gatherings that are happening in churches and libraries and living rooms across the country right now as people are figuring out how to come together in this moment. And just want to name, we have a hard fight ahead, and the stakes have never been higher, and the call has never been stronger. And I believe that there is so much hope still. I don't believe that most of this country wants Trump or wants white supremacy or wants fascism or authoritarianism. I believe many people voted in this election out of pain, out of suffering and struggle, and knowing that they wanted change. And they landed on the conclusion that Trump was the best way to see change happen. I know that these people, there's so many of our people out there who are suffering, and we can organize them into something better and share that vision of what is possible. Because we know Trump doesn't have a plan for taking care of people. We know who he's looking out for. And I believe that in the face of this crisis of what we're entering in 2025, we will see an incredible amount of collectivism and cooperation coming out of it that will make so much possible. And I just, am thinking about the permaculture connections here and thinking about like, we're often faced with terrain that feels impossible or like bare or degraded soil, shady areas, harsh conditions, and yet we can find ways to use what's there to make beautiful things flourish. And I think that's one of the big lessons that has come from permaculture work for me. And I'm really trying to use that as my lens for looking at this political moment too, and seeing the possibility how we can use what's in front of us to work with what we have and build more than was ever possible before. So I will leave it there. I know I went over my time, but thanks so much for letting me share a bit about my work and my story.
Thanks so much, Ash. That is inspiring. I heard today on a podcast that there was a Move On and Indivisible, and some of those organizations had a call with 140,000 people on it after the election, and 8,000 of them signed up to hold like neighborhood meetings and things. So we can get people organizing on that level. We can compost some of this and fertilize something new, and hopefully come out of this stronger and with an even stronger movement for justice. All right. Well, we are over time, but I think it's about time for us to say a lot of thank yous and open our circle, and maybe tell you about some other things that are coming up. Charles, did you want to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think just a quick reminder that we have a holiday auction going on right now. We invite people to come take a look at, check out, see if there's anything that might be something that would be a good gift for somebody in your life, or maybe for yourself. We also have many courses coming up, starting first part of the new year in January. We have a in-person permaculture design course. We still have space, so if you're interested in a permaculture class, the one that Ash and Wanda both have taken in California, that'd be in January. And also starting in later January, we have a disaster response and planning class, because disasters are becoming more common and we need to be ready. And we have a whole bunch of other classes that are coming up in February. So please check out the classes we have online if you're interested in coming. And if you can, donate to Earth Activist Training. It supports our diversity scholarship, which means that we can have more Indigenous people and people of color taking our programs that wouldn't have access otherwise.
Yeah, I will say our in-person courses have become more and more expensive to run because the venue has gotten more expensive, the food has gotten more expensive. We haven't actually raised our pay in more than 20 years, but everything else has gotten more expensive. And we have more people who want to take the course than we have scholarship money to support. So anything you can donate is really deeply appreciated. But you can also help us by spreading the word about our courses, about our auction, sharing it with people you know who might be interested, and just helping us get the word out and get more people in. Personally, I have another advanced magic class coming up starting on the 19th on ritual and story, transforming our inner and outer stories. And you can find that at my website, starhawk.org. Everything else is probably on our earthactivisttraining.org website. And I've also been working on a book on the movement we need, on how we organize, and incorporating some social permaculture. And I've been putting that out chapter by chapter on Substack. So if you go to starhawk.substack.com, you can find all of those things and follow along my process with this. I want to say a big thank you to our presenters, to Hannah and to Wanda and to Ash. I feel better now and I feel inspired. And I believe, Wanda, that your black girl magic is never going to disappear from the world. Let us
Okay.
share it with those who are worthy of it, right? And share some magic back with you, too. And thank you to our wonderful interpreters, Moonbeam and Amber. Thank you to Charles for all that you do for this organization and everything else in the world. And thank you to our Whole Earth Activist team that helps us put this all out and makes this possible. And do you want to thank the elements, Charles?
Yes, let's take a moment and thank the elements. So take a breath. Thank you, air. Feel the world around us. Thank you, fire. Emotions within us. Thank you, water. And the physicalness that holds us. Thank you, earth. And to all of you and the things we're grateful for, say thank you to spirit.
And now our circle is open but unbroken. Merry meet and merry part and merry meet again. And thank you all.
Thank you all.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires.
Thank you all for joining us too.
We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to live. love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
Thank you so much. And that song, I think Charles put it in the